Hey, MMA fans! Today we're gonna talk about some amazing UFC fighters and how they've changed over time. It's like watching superheroes transform. We'll see how they've worked hard to get stronger, change their fighting styles, and move up to different weight classes. Get ready to be wowed by their incredible journeys. Georges St-Pierre. Alright, let's talk about Georges St-Pierre, who's often called GSP. He's been a big deal in the UFC, especially in the welterweight division where he was the champ for a long time. GSP defended his title 9 times in a row, which is pretty awesome. But after his super close fight with Johnny Hendricks at UFC 167, where he just barely won, he decided to take a break from fighting. Fast forward to 2017, GSP made a cool comeback. He decided to jump back into the UFC, but in a different weight class. This time, he was going after the middleweight title, which was held by Michael Bisping. They were set to fight at UFC 217. Now here's where things get interesting. When GSP came back, he looked different. He had put on a lot of muscle and was way bulkier than before. He had really worked on getting bigger and stronger for this new weight class. People were impressed with how fit and muscular he looked leading up to the big fight. At UFC 217 though, we noticed something. Even though GSP was in great shape, he seemed a bit slower than his usual self. As the fight went on, it looked like he was getting tired faster. But hey, GSP's still GSP. He managed to catch Bisping in the third round with a rear naked choke. That means he grabbed Bisping from behind and squeezed until Bisping had to tap out, which means he gave up. With that move, GSP won the fight and became the new UFC middleweight champion. That's a big deal because he used to be the welterweight champ and now he was the champ in a heavier class. So we saw two different sides of GSP. When he was the welterweight champ, he was more about speed and endurance. But in the middleweight fight, he was bulkier and stronger, but a bit slower. It's cool to see how fighters can change and adapt to different challenges. GSP showed that you can be successful in different ways in the UFC. It's not just about how strong or fast you are, it's also about how smart you fight and how well you can adapt to different situations. That's what makes MMA and fighters like GSP so interesting to watch. Jon Jones. Alright, let's talk about Jon Jones. A big name in the UFC. He's known for being really good in the light heavyweight division for a long time. But there was a time when he got in trouble because of a hit-and-run accident. Because of that, he lost his UFC light heavyweight title and couldn't fight for a year. During his time off, Jon Jones got really into powerlifting. That's a sport where you lift super heavy weights. And guess what? He got really big and strong. It's like he transformed his body, adding a lot of muscle. Then, he made a big comeback. He had a fight against a guy named Ovince St. Preux. Jon Jones was amazing in this fight. He was in control from the start to the end and won by the judges, all agreeing he was the better fighter. Even now, when he's not fighting because he's suspended, he still looks bigger and more muscular than before. It's pretty cool to see how much his body has changed. When he was the champ, he was slim and muscular, but now he's way more buff. It shows how much someone can change when they really work at it, especially in sports like UFC, where your body is super important. So we've seen two different versions of Jon Jones. First, the slim and fast champion, and now, the bigger and stronger version. It's interesting to see how fighters can change and still be really good. It's not just about how you look, it's about how you train and fight. That's what makes fighters like Jon Jones really cool to watch. Paulo Costa. Okay, let's chat about Paulo Costa. He's a really strong fighter in the UFC, and he always looks super fit and muscular. But you know what? He wasn't always like that. When he first showed up on The Ultimate Fighter Brazil, which is like a TV show where fighters try to make it to the UFC, he had a much slimmer body. He wasn't as big and scary looking as he is now. After he got into the UFC, which is a big deal for fighters, everyone noticed how he just started winning a lot. He fights in a really bold way, always moving forward and being super aggressive. It's like he just powers through his opponents and he's finished off a lot of them, which means he's won without needing the judges to decide. That's pretty impressive. What really makes Paulo Costa stand out is how he looks. Compared to other middleweight fighters, he's just got this really muscular and strong appearance. It's like he's been working super hard to get in the best shape possible. So, if you look at pictures of him from when he was on that TV show and now, it's a big change. Back then, he was thinner, and now he's all muscled up. It's cool to see how much someone can change their body with a lot of hard work and training, especially in a tough sport like UFC. It just goes to show that being a successful fighter isn't only about how you fight, but also about how you prepare your body and keep getting stronger. That's why watching fighters like Paulo Costa is so exciting. Rousimar Palhares. Rousimar Palhares, also known as Toquinho, is a fighter who's been around for a while, fighting in both the middleweight and welterweight divisions. One thing that's always been noticeable about him is his bulky and strong physique. He's like a muscle machine, and it's been that way for as long as he's been fighting. Now, Palhares hasn't had the easiest time in his career. He's been let go from several fighting organizations because he didn't always follow the rules in the ring. One of the big problems was that he tended to hold onto his submission moves for too long, even after his opponents had given up. This caused some serious injuries to other fighters, which is a big no-no in sports. But here's something interesting. A recent photo of Palhares popped up on social media, and wow, he looks even bigger and more muscular than before. It's like he's been working super hard at the gym and has put on a lot of muscle. People are starting to think he might be getting ready to move up and fight in the heavyweight division, which is for even bigger fighters. If you look at pictures of him from before and now, you can really see the difference. He used to be big, but now he's like super big. It's pretty cool to see how fighters can change their bodies to fit different weight classes in UFC. It's all about training hard and eating right. So, we might see Palhares starting over in the heavyweight division. It'll be interesting to see how he does against the bigger guys there. His story is a reminder of how important it is to play fair and follow the rules, but also how you can always work hard and try to make a fresh start. Anthony Rumble Johnson. Anthony Rumble Johnson is a fighter who's had a really interesting journey in the UFC. He's moved through different weight divisions because he's a big guy, and cutting weight to fit into a division was tough for him. Let me tell you a bit about his story. He first started fighting in the welterweight division, which is for lighter fighters. Back then, Anthony was super ripped and toned, but the process of losing weight to stay in that division was really hard on his body. It's not easy to keep dropping weight, especially when you're naturally a bigger person. So, Anthony decided to move up to the light heavyweight division, and wow, did we see a difference? He gained a lot of muscle and started to really show what he could do. In this division, Anthony was like a powerhouse. He was knocking out other fighters left and right with his incredible strength. It was amazing to watch him fight with so much power. His last fight in the UFC was at UFC 210, where he faced Daniel Cormier. Unfortunately, Anthony lost that fight by a rear naked choke. After that, he decided to retire from fighting and focus on bodybuilding. Since he's been into bodybuilding, Anthony has gotten even bigger and more muscular. It's like he's a whole new person. If you compare pictures of him from when he was in the welterweight division to now, the difference is huge. He used to be this lean, fit fighter, and now he's built like a tank. It's crazy to think he used to fight in a lighter division. There's talk about what it would be like if Anthony came back to the UFC, but this time in the heavyweight division. That's for the really big fighters. Imagine Anthony with all his new muscle fighting in that division. It would be super interesting to see. So, Anthony Johnson's story is about how he changed his body and his fighting style to find where he fits best. It shows that in sports like UFC, you have to keep adapting and finding what works for you. And who knows, maybe we'll see him back in the ring one day, showing off all that muscle in the heavyweight division. That's it, fight fans. We just checked out some cool transformations of UFC fighters. It's amazing to see how they change their bodies and fighting styles. It's like they're always working to be the best in the ring. Remember, it's not just about being strong, it's about being smart and always improving. Stay tuned for more awesome fight stories. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more exciting content.